lot of things to learn in Japanese.
Aloha everyone, we're here at MomoCon 2025 with...
Oh, I'm Jonathan Holmes.
Jonathan has been a longtime fan and supporter of SUDA51, and as a fan of Jonathan's, you may have seen him giving SUDA his rarest and most obscure game, No More Gentlemen. Can you tell us about how you got a copy of that?
Yeah, I try my best to give credit where credit's due, but I may not be able to because having been a writer on the internet for 18 years, I'm relatively friendly. If you like DM me and say, hey, I read this thing you wrote, I like it, I'll probably respond. So somebody DM me, I believe it's a gentleman named Khalid who lives in the Middle East forever ago. I want to say maybe 12 years ago. And he was like, oh, you like No More Heroes, like around whenever No More Gentlemen came out, if you want to call it that. I was like, I can't believe this came out, and I want to know what it is. And I couldn't find a way to play it online anywhere. And he said, oh yeah, that's like down at the local shop in like the Middle East somewhere. He's like, I'll buy it for you and mail it to you. I'm like, how much? He's like, don't even worry about it. It's like $3. You know, they just had tons of copies, at least 2 or 3. So he mailed it over, and I was always afraid to actually put it in the computer because I didn't know if it was just going to fill my computer with malware or if it was like part of a heavy smell style attack on the society. So I just held on to it and looked at it forever. And then Grasshopper had its birthday. I can't remember which birthday it was. It was around when Travis Strikes Again came out that SUDA was at PAX East. So I surprised him with a cake and sang a weird song with him. And I was just going, oh, like, you know, he couldn't believe, because I'd been interviewing him off and on for years, but I never done that before. So he felt very touched, and then I gave him No More Gentlemen. He never heard of it. Shocked. And I don't think I warned him not to put it in his computer, but just like have it as a piece of how he fits into the world and how he's been copied by people that are in some ways just trying to get cash off his name, but in some ways are even weirder than him, I think. Because why would you run with Gentlemen? Like what's and the game, from what I understand, is like a piecemeal 3D like Wanderer-con. Like there's no Gentlemen to be seen. It's a whole piece of work, I guess.
I've actually played No More Gentlemen, and I can confirm it's not a virus. It was actually made by
New Zealand
video game design students. It's a steampunk zombie shooting game that has nothing to do with No More Heroes. So I think what happened was someone simply mixed the names together to try to get it to sell, like you said about making money.
What did they sell? New Zealand?
No, it was, I think it was like a thesis project or something. Wow. So the copy you got was being sold by people who didn't have anything to do with it. So it is actually weirder than you originally thought.
Yeah, it was in the Middle East somehow, where a lot of bootleg games, I understand. I talk to folks from Palestine, from Iran, Iraq, and they'll be like, I played nothing but bootleg PS1 games, like bootleg. So very bootleg friendly culture. It sounds great to me.
I completely agree with you. I think it's very interesting to have things like that because it functions kind of as like a parallel indie market almost, where you have a more non-corporate structure to video game design and distribution, which I'm sure corporations don't like, but as a fan, it's very interesting.
Yeah. And SUDA was immediately like, whoa, like not at all mad. And he encourages fans to make their own merch all the time. So I got a sign some thing like that, something from Dr. Rambo with me that's going to sign for me. It's something he really, I think, my understanding of SUDA is he does the business side very well because he has to. But if it were up to him, everybody could just get paid to just make something.
That's always the feeling I've got from SUDA. I remember him announcing at some point a few years ago, someone asking like, oh, would you ever make the shirts from No More Heroes or Travis's shirts, or they're both Travis from Killer 7. And he just told them like...
As far as the shirts go, actually the shirts that you see behind me, these were shirts that were that we actually made at Grasshopper. And we're not really selling officially. Little side note, as interpreter, I got one of the ones on the far right, and I'm super stoked about it. But they're not actually available for sale online or anything from us. But I'm not sure if it's actually okay to bring this up, but there's a site, I believe it's called Red Ribbon, that they appear to be making and selling these shirts just on their own without permission. So since we're not doing it, if anybody out there wants a shirt, check out Red Ribbon. They got them there.
Very nice to know that SUDA supports its fans and supports them kind of against the corporate infrastructure of gaming, which would prefer that things be a lot more under control and less artistic.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about your history as a journalist and like when you first met SUDA, things like that?
Oh, sure. So I hasten to call myself a journalist, but if other people, it's almost like calling myself an artist. If somebody thinks I made art, that's super flattering. If people think I journalized, thanks. But I never like went to journalism school, or I don't claim to be one. I think that sometimes people will attack you if you claim to be a journalist, claim to be an artist, and claim to be a professional golfer, and you suck at golf. They'll just be like, get off it, you know. But I'm just showing up and hoping up for the best. I started writing for Interactivity in 2008. I've been at it for a little while. I actually reviewed No More Heroes. It's a two-person review with Anthony Birch, who also worked at Interactivity, who went on to write for Adventure Time and Borderlands, and has written stuff with John Carpenter. So I knew him just over the internet. We would do projects together for Interactivity. I actually made graphics for a video game he made about all his ex-girlfriends, ghosts chasing me. You can look that up. It's called Runner. So we were like, we didn't really know each other, but we saw each other as allies and collaborators, so we would team up on things. No More Heroes was one of the first games I reviewed with him. And I think I gave it a 2.5. I was like, I love it, but I guess since I'm a journalist now, or a reviewer, there's like some standard I'm supposed to meet. I'm supposed to look at things as products. And if you review it as a product, you're like, well, you know, the levels get a little repetitive, I guess, and the motion controls are cool, but they're not really necessary. So I had to like look at it from that lens of like reviewing a thing, and then also review it as art. And as art, I was like, I love it. As a thing, it's somewhat flawed, I guess. And I've been reviewing SUDA's games that way but I've gotten braver in my critique, if you want to call it that, or I've stopped trying to look at things as products as much, because not only is it boring, I don't think it's like super helpful to people to be like, oh, there's some bugs or some. Yeah, people want to know, I hope, how I felt about something as a player and my relationship with it, and why the relationship was what it was. So since then, I'm more apt to give this games. Like I gave No More Heroes 3 a 9.5. It was like nearly the perfect game that I wanted to have in my relationship with No More Heroes 3. There's a bunch of content that's like clearly cut, and it almost is like maybe a commentary on the incompleteness of itself. Like he didn't try to hide it at all. I think he wanted people to know, like, I wanted to make even more game for you. You sure know there's so many ideas he had for that game. It just didn't happen. And I'm trying to recall if that was the first game. Is that the last game under Gung Ho, or the first game under Names? I can't remember.
I believe that was the last game under Gung Ho. I think they split after that.
Yeah, that's right. I think it might have released after NetEase, but it was like completed under Gung Ho, I think. And I know that relationship, SUDA would never say anything negative about it, but they like parted ways for a reason. So,
Yeah.
No More Heroes 3 did not turn out the way it wanted to. My understanding is largely because of like funding. And yet, you can collect Gene's kittens in it for so long. I have like a 60-hour file on that game just from finding Doppelganger, collecting chips. Just it gives you so many excuses to just stay with Travis for a little longer. The gotcha pieces in that game, such a beautiful tribute to not only SUDA's like legacy, but also like to the fans. Like we know you would want little amiibos of Bad Girl and even like the wood robot from Travis Strikes Again if you can get it, but that's not gonna make any money, so we can't actually make it. Marvelous is gonna make it, but we'll put it in the game for you, like as a fan to collect. Travis is like collecting figurines of himself and being like, "Wow, I loved me," It's just such a funny thing to do.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And obviously, we can talk as much shit about Gung Ho, NetEase, and anyone else that's fucked over SUDA because we don't work for grasshoppers.
That's
so
right.
Feel free.
Right.
I also agree with your point about a shift in game journalism culture. I'm younger than you, but probably older than plenty of people. So I grew up in a time of reading video game magazines pre-YouTube, and back then I think there was more of, debatably, a necessity for consumer guides because you didn't have 24-hour access to commercials. You couldn't review game footage at your leisure the way you can now on YouTube. I think for modern game journalism, or whatever you want to call it, it makes more sense to talk about things with the assumption that the person reading it or watching it has more access to more information than it used to in the past. So I think it makes sense to shift the tone towards more of a truly like personal viewpoint, reviewing games as art. And I think that's also good as a shift in gaming culture itself to give more credit to developers and individual artists who work on games rather than just viewing them as products that game companies put out, which I feel like was more of a trend in the past.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that reviewing games as other products is boring for most people, and it also makes it more meaningless as a writer, so it's harder. I couldn't keep going if I was just like talking about frame rates. I know some people like that stuff. I burn out. And also reviewing, yeah, it's good to know, but I don't need to like.
It's not good to care.
It's good to know, but not good to care. And likewise, reviewing reviewers by a standard, like in general, I feel like there's two camps in the game world. Super empathetic people that want to get to know each other through their games, through talking about games with other people. Like it's a way to get to the subconscious for people a lot of the time. Because what we consciously express is filtered, and I'm like trying to plan my words and blah blah blah. But as we've talked about before, like SUDA makes a point to not filter. He just goes all out there. So you can really get to know him, and he gets to know himself, I think, through what he writes and what he writes. And if I were to be like, well, he really expressed himself as a human being, but the frame rate was low, it just doesn't jive with what the purpose is. And likewise, I think when people judge people who write about games and come up with like a checklist of things journalists are supposed to do, don't wear a mask, don't wear a leg, make sure that you always like do XYZ thing because journalists have to follow certain rules, you end up limiting yourself a lot of times. That's why I hasten to call myself a journalist. I don't want people to read stuff I've written and expect like Tom Brokaw or white-haired guy. I know these guys. It's a new time where we don't need all of those rules in the same way, depending on what you're talking about. Like if I were reporting news about the politics of life or death things,
It would be more necessary,
Yeah, I
or
would
more
definitely-
reasonable.
right? And even the concept of game journalism, I thought should have been, and I hoped to have kind of latch onto it as a way of upending the whole idea of journalism, because most people I say, oh yeah, some people have called me a game journalist. If they are not into games, they're like, that's like dehydrated water. Like journalism is about important things. Games are fantasy and made up and not important, so you can't do both. I'm like, that was kind of the joke, yeah, but they didn't. And then of course, people who love games often will just say they hate game journalists because they didn't follow the news, right? So it's a weird gray area I've been in for almost 2 decades now.
I agree with you, and I think, especially when talking about SUDA, for anyone who's like a long-time SUDA fan, they know that SUDA is very inspired by David Lynch, who always made a point to work from the unconscious. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, especially for video games. Like when I was growing up, seeing commercials for the PS2, they really leaned into the dream aspect. Like, the PlayStation is an alternate reality device. And I know SUDA has said he's a fan of the movie Existence. I think we can also take that as, a very literal movie about like, hey, what are video games going to look like in the future? How much will our relationship between the technology and reality continue to evolve? And I think it's interesting that SUDA is someone who from the very beginning, has always been thinking of games as essentially like dream simulators. And I think that was a little bit of a trend in the 90s with people like Indino and like other kind of like avant-garde, like Gen X game designers. So it's nice to see that SUDA is one of the people who's kept up that style, especially as the gaming industry has grown so much larger and like more corporate. That SUDA has like stuck at its roots, I would say, more than it.
Yeah. Having had talked to him about that for the years, I'll often be like, so you're like pushing back against the mainstream. He's like, what? I'm like, you're doing your own thing. He's like, I'm just trying to like, my team needs to make money. I'm trying to make a good game. Like, I'm not here to like be different. He literally just can't help it. Like, he sits down and is like, all right, successful bingo. What are we gonna do? Benicio del Toro, a talking gun, tons of dick jokes, symbolism about having a girlfriend with a substance use disorder and is plagued by demons. She's suicidal. You're holding her head. I'm like, SUDA, that might cash in. It might, but it's not Minecraft. It's not Roblox. It's not hot with the kids right now. He's like, I think it's cool. And then he runs with it. So he's got such an interesting mix of being, first of all, I think sort of like borderline innocent, unaware of how his ideas are going to be taken as like really weird. Like, he plays it up as like, you know, I guess I'm weird, so I'll say I'm crazy, but he's actually like extremely down to earth and not trying to like get attention for himself. Very, very like loving and kind to the fans, humble, not all about like showboating or trying to be different. He just wants to like hang out and be a friend. So
That's very much been my experience as a fan, like interacting with SUDA, talking to him. And we know SUDA's a real weirdo because he doesn't realize he is.
Exactly.
Which is also how we know he's a real artist.
Exactly. So he can't help but, like, these are the ideas that feel right to him. He trusts his gut. Enough success that he's built up confidence and he's like, all right, Jonathan Holmes thinks my idea isn't getting much money, but I'm going for it. And he does. It's fantastic. While also always thinking, how can I make like the best quality product? How can I help everyone on my team to like be able to pay the bills and like survive in this world? So he's really like almost like the father. He technically is the father of Grasshopper, but everyone who works with Grasshopper, he treats with like tons of kindness and respect and hope that he's like doing right by them as a leader. So he takes that responsibility super seriously.
I definitely noticed that, and from my contacts at Grasshopper, both present and former, that's what everyone's told me too. I've never heard anything other than good things about SUDA, which is always nice to know that, like his idol David Lynch, he maintains the same type of kindness towards his staff and collaborators, which unfortunately is a rarity in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. The amount of horror stories I've heard, I'm from the Boston area where BioShock was made. And I would talk to people who worked on BioShock. And then I'd have to talk to Ken Levine later.
I always love dystopia stories.
You're like, so, I heard some things about you.
Start screaming and running around.
I want to like you. I want to like everybody. Like, my thing is, we're all human beings. There's things I don't like that people did. But I try not to like blanket dislike a person. Because you never know. We all have bad days.
We want to create brilliant things, but we're human, so we always screw it up.
But the stuff I heard about the making of BioShock was not great.
Some people have bad weeks.
It was, I think that was like, it was some years on that. And maybe he's changed.
And no matter how strong our ideals are, it always falls apart.
But yeah, it's very common, I think, for there to be sort of a auteur attitude where the person running the company sees everyone else as like serving them, and SUDA has that completely flipped. It's like, fans, yesterday at the signing here at MomoCon, the line was supposed to be cut, and he just let people keep coming. And we had to get ready for a panel, we had all the stuff to do. He's like, these people are more important than the stuff we have to do. That each individual person, regardless if they never buy a Grasshopper product again, we wouldn't be here if we didn't have it. So we always put them first. Speaking of which, I made some shirts with a fan, Beetle. And the proceeds for the shirts, I'm sending her the money for it. They're pretty cool though. I'm gonna throw some of these out. I tried to give them, I gave one to SUDA and one to Swery. The representation on the shirt is a concept of a SUDA versus Swery fighting game or something someday, because they're doing some panel work together. And the Grasshopper team is just like, give these to the fans. Like, you know, there's super cool shirts and thank you, and like, we love to look at the art, but if we had to choose between getting to wear it ourselves and making sure the fan gets to wear it, and they didn't even get to it. I mean, throwing these out in the crowd, I think.
If you didn't make it here, you could have gotten a free shirt. Are they still available online?
Yeah, we put them back on sale because a few people were wearing them yesterday, and it just felt weird to like, people saw the shirt at MomoCon being like, oh no, I didn't get one, and like, maybe they'll get one at the panel. I bought these myself, so I only could afford to like a few. It's so much money. But since people have been seeing the art, we also have prints of the art laying around. There's a print we're going to give out about 40 of these. It's less characters because Beetle was working down to the wire. Like, I asked her, do you want to do anything for the con? She quickly whipped up the shirts and got them made just in time to sell them, so they ship in time for people to get it, to have SUDA and Swery sign at the con. So she was working on this until like the day I left to print them and print them out. So she didn't get to coloring all the characters, but it's still pretty cool.
I think it's a great piece. I really like the line work.
Yeah.
It's you had told me before we started this interview you were playing Marvel vs. Capcom, and it kind of reminds me of that. Like, that old Japanese line style, like Street Fighter 3.
This is a tribute to a specific piece. I think it's by Vengus for Marvel vs. Capcom 1, where they're all just like looking at each other, and it's almost like, it feels romantic, borderline, but not like kissy romantic, but just like,
you know, SUDA Swery has a
step. They're at the museum right now. They were last night. I was they're very polite. They bring me to dinner, but I don't speak Japanese, so I'm just kind of like sitting there eating a burger with them and watching them.
Try to eat it in Japanese.
Yeah, well. So and I'll talk to their interpreters a little bit here and there, but they're also, you know, trying to explain how. So they just did dad puns for like an hour. And I just check in with the interpreter and be like, are we still doing it? Like, yeah. He's like, oh, and like cracking up. I had none of the puns translated, so they couldn't interpret the comedy for me. They really, really like each other. It's great to see.
I agree. I think Swery is a very like-minded spirit to SUDA, and it's nice that anyone from that era of the really weird Japanese games is still going strong. I'm happy to see Swery succeeding with his own studio. I'm happy that they're working together, releasing stuff. After I played Deadly Premonition, I immediately wanted them to work together, so I'm happy that this is starting to come true, and I hope that for more future collaborations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people who don't know their individual games might say it's kind of like McDonald's and Burger King teaming up. It's like, so it's just got to be more burgers. Like, but their games to me are extremely different. Like, SUDA really focuses on style and like a wild burst of energy, and really focused on like really intentional writing that's made to like grab you by the gut. Whereas Swery is so gentle and like takes his time, even with The Missing, which is one of my favorite games, if not the favorite. It takes so long to unravel, and it's shocking because the main character like gets dismembered and then you use her flopping arm to like solve a puzzle or whatever. So he always like finds a hook that's gonna like pack a punch, and then after the punch has been hit, he's just like, now we're just gonna slowly, quietly walk through a forest and just like figure it out. He's so much more. It's funny because I'm hosting their panel in a couple of hours, and they're like, so Swery's like this evil genius of game. Think about it. We did Death Game Hotel, where like people are like hurting themselves or continuing the game. We did The Missing, and I'm like, he's a Buddhist monk, and he like loves humanity and just wants everybody to get along. He doesn't believe that any person is bad. He doesn't believe that anything is bad. He's like, we're going to talk about it in the panel pretty soon, I think, but he hinted last night that Hotel Barcelona, a game about being a U.S. Marshal bathed in blood killing serial killers, and some of them are based on like Jason and Jaws or whatever. He's like, it's actually about finding ways to mend our differences and for humanity to come together as a whole, and for us to treat each other with love and respect unconditionally. What the? How are you? But he can't help it. He just wants to make the world a better place.
I think that Swery as a monk is really in a unique position to talk about violence, to talk about like the harm that people do to each other. In, again, similar to SUDA, inspired by David Lynch. I think having people who know how to be kind talk about like the evils and the ills of humanity, those are the people that are really going to understand like the darkness inside of people and the awful things we do to each other, and serve as a reflection for the people who listen to understand these things better.
Yeah.
I'm very happy that Swery is also returning to his roots in horror, though debatably he never left the dismemberment in all the games. I would say something that I like that SUDA and Swery both do is the way they collage and reinterpret the sort of visual language of games. Like in The Missing, Swery uses like a similar style HUD to Fallout and kind of plays with like a given concept in games and reinterprets it. I think that's very interesting, and I would like to see more developers continue to sort of blend the various given elements of games.
Yeah, that's a great point. I loved a lot of that in No More Heroes 3 as well. I think that where people get stuck is they want to like just quickly be delivered a joke. Like people played No More Heroes 3 and there's like multiple references to multiple genres in there. There's like a long talk about Travis hating Final Fantasy 7, but they can't call it that. So people were like, but where's like the punchline? Where's like the quick parody joke? And it's like, it's a little bit less direct than that, and it's a little bit more open to interpretation of that. So why are you wanting a joke so bad about XYZ game? Why do you have animosity towards a game? Like the hope, I think, that we have with this stuff is to give people a platform to reflect without yelling a specific message at them. So it's a little bit more opportunity to play with the concepts instead of just it being told them. They got into video games. They want people to interact and play with what they're making, not just have a linear message that's sent to them in film, TV show. So you can't really play with the joke if you're just being told a joke and like a quick laugh. It's supposed to be more of an open to interpretation.
I completely agree with you. I think the key word is interactivity, and that can be an issue in gaming culture where people spend their time playing an interactive medium, but they're looking for more passive ways to interact with it. And it's nice, I think, that people like SUDA and Swery kind of fuck with the player and encourage them to like, hey, I'm going to make you stop and think, and I'm going to do it in a way where if you can't handle it, you're going to have to turn the game off.
It's so interesting because I've asked SUDA that off and on for years, and he's like, I want the player to have a wonderful experience. I never want them to have a bad time. And also, this is the only way I know how to like give people a good time. I don't know how to just do things the standard way. And it was the same with David Lynch. He was like, why are you looking for so much symbolism? It's right there.
As soon as you finish a film, people want you to talk about it. And it's, the film is the talking. The film is the thing.
I'm not trying to be weird. I'm just trying to like show who I am. But people, because it was so honest and it didn't follow the rules, people didn't know. It takes so much more work to start from the ground up instead of just going through a checklist, bottom down, and being like, well, it's this kind of movie, so it's this kind of message. Oh, there's the romance scene I expected. There's the fight scene. You know, when things don't happen at the time you think they're supposed to happen, when they don't follow the craft rules, you have to take it on its own merits, and that's more work than a lot of people want to do. I would say Lynch, SUDA, and Swery all do that.
I completely agree, and I think it's very important that we give the people who are willing to be more honest, like our eyes and ears, and let them show us the world that they see, because we stand to benefit.
Yeah.
Auteur 51 is very nice.